Buenos días, jueves 8 de octubre, cuarto día de la Escuela del Sur de Governanza, Internet y edición virtual, Argentic también. ¿Vieron qué look traje hoy, no? Un look así, Marruecos. Día primaveral en Buenos Aires, saludos desde Argentina para todos, todas y todes en toda la región y en todo el mundo. Hoy tenemos un keynote, ayer la vieron moderando un panel a nuestra querida Yoselin Vos Castro. Yoselin, querida, es una amiga de la escuela de hace muchos años. Ella fue nuestra host, nuestra anfitriona principal cuando organizamos la Escuela del Sur de Governanza de Internet en Panamá en el año 2013, que fue una edición súper exitosa, con muchísima gente, con mucha participación de todas las partes interesadas. Así que, Yoselin, es un gusto tenerte de vuelta con nosotros. Voy a leer el título completo de ella para no equivocarme. Docente del Instituto Superior de la Judicatura, ISJUP de Panamá, pero lo más importante es que ella es muy amiga de la escuela, amiga de todos los becarios y de todos los docentes, y ella nos va a hablar sobre un tema súper importante del que ella realmente conoce mucho: navegación segura versus violencia digital. Yoselin, ¿estás por ahí?
Aquí estoy, buenos días a todos.
Hola,
qué placer tenerlos tempranito. Perdón si les quité el café, en Panamá son las 8 de la mañana.
Sí, lo sé. Muchas gracias porque te levantaste temprano para nosotros, pero bueno.
Con un gusto.
Bueno, querida, un gusto tenerte de vuelta con nosotros. Ayer el panel estuvo muy bien, muy lindo, hemos tenido muy buenos comentarios, así que nada, te escuchamos y después al final yo voy a estar revisando si hay preguntas de los becarios y te las voy a hacer saber.
Perfecto, entonces paso a compartir pantalla. Dame un segundo. ¿Y aquí la ven?
Ahí va.
Sí.
Ahí está.
Ok, perfecto. Ok, entonces, bueno, buenos días a todos. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí. Bueno, hoy me toca conversar un poquito con ustedes de un tema de navegación segura versus violencia digital. Cuando hablamos de Internet, siempre es como que se ve así como un gran mar, fluido, tranquilo, otras veces se vuelve algo frágil y calmado, pero hay momentos en donde ese mar pues se vuelve un poco agitado y muchas veces violento, y Internet tiene estas mismas características. Nosotros pues hoy día no logramos sentirnos conectados con Internet porque todo el tiempo ya vivimos dentro de la red. Estamos conectados permanentemente a través de nuestros celulares, los televisores, la música. O sea, nuestra interconexión es tan importante porque ahora necesitamos inmediatez en nuestras comunicaciones. Antes, por ejemplo, si alguien se quería comunicar conmigo, tenía que esperar primero si yo estuviese en casa o en el trabajo. Si no estaba en alguno de esos sitios y no tenía un celular, había una paz y una calma impresionante y la gente tenía que esperar a que yo estuviera disponible o cerca del teléfono. Hoy día eso es impensable. De hecho, ¿cuántos de nosotros estamos aquí y se nos queda el celular y nos regresamos a la casa a buscarlo? O de hecho, veamos otro tema. ¿Cuántos se dieron cuenta que no tienen el celular en silencio al lado y empezaron ya a tocar sus bolsillos para asegurarse que si lo tienen o no? De hecho, todos sintieron esa ansiedad aquí en el corazón, ¿verdad? Es un tema de que ya el teléfono es una extensión nuestra y nuestros equipos de interconexión nos produce ansiedad incluso saber que no lo tenemos muy cerca, y obviamente también son temas exageradamente beneficiosos en los temas médicos, educativos, de salud. Bueno, hay N cantidad de beneficios.
It brings a lot of benefits. The problem lies, as we were seeing in the panel yesterday, there are positive things and at the same time negative or detrimental, because there's a group of people that are using social media and the internet to create violence. we can see this as any sort of harassment when using new technologies. When I deal this with adults, I hear a grandfather or a father saying, I cannot get it. Because at this time, you know, after the break, basically they get into a fight and that's how they settle things. However, seniors do not understand how, if this happens in the virtual world, eventually impacts a person in the physical environment. And this is what I'm trying to get at. There are different situations that we can foresee or anticipate. As a matter of fact, these are some of the examples where we can see the violence that internet brings about or with new technologies. We talk about cyberbullying. Cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is being harassed through new technologies. Consider this scenario. If we go back to many years ago, when I suffered cyberbullying or bullying, when I was being bullied at that time, and I got home, I was at peace to reflect upon the situation, to discuss it with my parents. So basically, I had to regain some power, energy to go back to school the following day. But with cyberbullying, this is different. This is a 24 by 7 attack. As we are all interconnected, my family is in the same network where I share my friends, my dancing team, my sports team members. So it's not just a group that is harassing me, but it creates a lot of people and it's a 24/7 attack. So the victim doesn't have time to reflect or to recover from the situation. Also, we're analyzing the issue in terms of human trafficking. For example, sometimes this brings about poverty, prostitution, trafficking, and they fall victims as they are vulnerable sectors of society. They fall victims of this sort of precarious and calamitous situation. Also, child pornography, audio, video images of our children being abused and totally out of context. Especially given the situation of COVID 19 and that everybody is interconnected, we notice a rise in terms of child pornography, sextortion, that is to get images, nude images, and then to basically for compromissory information, and then to ask for money, grooming. Imagine if I have a partner or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, then we break up. They use these videos or images to harm us. And here there's an issue with fake claims that is very infrequent. And right times there's lynching because probably we got wind of a person that is a child molester. This creates an immediate response, and in social media and the internet, what we're seeing is that people do not stop for a minute if that is fake news or if it's legitimate and if it comes from a safe and if they double check that, or probably I issue my judgment faced with that image and I create a campaign where we had situations in our region where we had people lynched because somebody took a picture at a school, and that person believed that he was harassing children, or he had sexual interest in these schoolboys and he was lynched. Also, for example, people asking for location or asking for pictures or password or probably having some kind of dormant bug that will allow geolocation at all times, although also gender-based violence and things like that. Hate crimes as well. Other actions that commit criminals in order to attract minors, especially for human trafficking over the internet for grooming, that is the first thing that they do. They gain their trust. They befriend people and they tell them that they are the only ones that can understand them. And if teenagers cannot be understood, and probably parents are their worst natural enemies, and all the conflicts that they suffer during their teenage years, and there's somebody that comes here as a savior that listens to me and that I hear what I have to hear or what I like, they use social engineering and they convince people and then they go beyond limits. They ask for pictures or videos of as a token of appreciation of friendship or whatever, and then they offer sometimes clothing, trips, gifts, and something that could be humiliating. But we consider that this is vulnerable sectors of society, and sometimes we offer them data. They offer them data, for example, for the SIM cards that in Panama is very expensive, it's $5. And in exchange of that telephone data, they ask for images. This is the viral challenge of Jonathan Galindo. A person committed suicide because he was following this challenge. He took the challenge and he got scared with a character in his bio, and he left a note for his mother saying that he was scared of this person. On the case to the right, we have a situation when there was a man that did a Facebook Live killing a senior, indicating that he was going to kill other people if his mother or his wife prevented him from doing it in the future. So we had other situations where I do Facebook Lives, where I broadcast, where I'm live by killing people. And another thing is the terrorist act in New Zealand, when the terrorists and when they were doing this action, they were going live in Facebook and in other social media, the manslaughter. They were basically imitating video gamings or video games they play over the internet. And the most important thing is the audience. They were creating audience and with the feeds, and they were becoming intolerant to, even though we are intolerant to violence, we consume this form of information. So they were trying to engage a larger audience by doing that. I don't know how your countries are, but in Panama, when we have these political campaigns, the last campaign that we ran was very, very violent, and this was used to reduce violence and to use social media in in a better way. Of course, we made reference to social, cultural aspects that were included in the campaign. The device is a small device that allows us to communicate. However, the wealth of information or the attack leads us to have serious consequences in his private life or with the work he does or with the way he lives. Can we quantify this damage? That is interesting because sometimes these people could be untraceable. They leave no traces. Can we quantify then the damage? Well, we may identify it since the information is being posted, how many followers they have, how many shares they have, the interactions, comments, reviews, or groups of followers that these people attract in this sort of engagement. Now, when discussing this with a senior, we said, okay, how can we quantify this damage? Well, we know that statistics have revealed that this could lead to stress, wrath, depression, anguish. And even though we have physical damage like headaches, nausea, loss of appetite, and this may lead to suicide by panicking because they believe that there's no other way out. Another consequence is like that they may lose their jobs, to change schools, they abandon new technologies by trying to respond to this sort of violence that they are suffering. Here we have some statistics. The Argentine Association of Cybercrime shows how the increase has been in unauthorized publication of images, and the Observatory of Cybercrime shows very, very clearly how cybercrime has been evolving by gender. Here we can visualize that, we can see that women are fall victims more frequently than men, and we can quantify which are the most common by gender in every single country. So, what do we do? How should we approach to browse safely the web? Because eventually, it's not that we could abstract ourselves by using or refrain from using the internet given these sort of situations that affect the way we browse. That is not the idea because there's a whole universe of opportunities, and it's a democratic right to have access to the internet, to have better growth tools as human beings. Here, as digital citizens, we may start with the weakest link in the chain because by social engineering they try to weaken and get passwords out of the citizens. If I have social media, I need to check who my followers are because sometimes we consider that the most valuable person or the most popular person is in line with the number of followers, or we need to work on the ego because they take pride in what they show. The more followers they have, the more popularity these people have. So there's competition on the number of followers. However, they never assess how many people are seeing this sensitive information, or who am I sharing this information that is my personal information with my family, relatives, that I shouldn't be sharing with anybody else. Also, safe passwords. We were discussing yesterday in our panel the one that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, or the names of my dog, my son's daughters, anniversary dates. That is so simple, and we can get it just by merely looking at social media or Facebook. Sometimes you publish the date of birth. So if I make a relationship by my age and by the date of birth, I could get a password. And sometimes you can easily identify those passwords and use them in other platforms. So, how much private information am I sharing? Why can we use the internet to report these sort of dangers that we're faced with? Because sometimes we take pride in gathering all so much information. For example, with internet governance, why can we share those reports so the citizenry could raise awareness in terms of this training? Because sometimes we that are involved in technical aspects or address these aspects, we need to keep it simple to convey this message. So sometimes we have people that do not understand technical terminology and they eventually fall prey of these sort of situations. So parents should have power in the digital world because sometimes we close windows at night and we set up our cameras, but we leave the devices with children and they keep browsing until 2 or 3 in the morning or around the clock. And sometimes parents they say that well these are things for the young people and they become disconnected from the world of teenagers. So when you have a situation of grooming or when teenagers, whether girls or boys, they show their chest and they said, well, this is the black sheep in the family, how could you do this? And they victimize girls or boys that they provoke this sort of situation and they stop communicating with the parents and they defend themselves in the internet without knowing what is really happening, which ends up being destroying them. We need to humanize networks, and this is very, very important. The citizenry has the decision of what to share. We share sometimes traffic accidents, victims that are beaten up, and we're highly critical of this information. And the most important thing is to file claims when we see this situation. Sometimes there are unreported statistics, but this is we need to file claims because sometimes there are no laws or they believe that there's no legislation on this so they cannot be exposed faced with this sort of situations. The state has to address and pass laws that are important, but these are not laws, state laws with they need to be in cooperation with certain agencies, among institutions, together with civil society, and with other countries. We need to have international cooperation. We cannot think locally because here, criminals do not, they go and they cross borders and they have the technology to do so. So the state needs to have international cooperation so that we can make policies that could be effective and operational and to raise campaign awareness campaigns to report and to update on the variations or the different crimes, and we need to give the appropriate financial funding to these campaigns. For example, I was discussing this with prosecutors, and a prosecutor reported when this was, they invited people and they said, well, this is like a CSI lab. And he said, no, this is not a CSI lab because they don't have the protocols like the CSI lab. Also, we need to involve companies, NGOs, and universities to conduct research, discussion forums. So it is important that given this analysis, we should place priority upon migrants, minority groups, the most vulnerable sectors of society, and to meet the SDGs to promote and to guarantee gender equality, health, promoting alliances, and promoting peaceful and more equitable partnerships. For example, last Friday, we there was a conviction of a criminal, of a person that attacked a girl and a woman, of cyber harassment, and we were successful in getting this conviction. At the end of the day, we have a calm ocean if we have the right information and if we act collectively over the internet, and if and victims victims and those that perpetrate these crimes are not aware of this framework. So we need to create campaigns for victims and for stalkers. Olga, I think I was able to comply with the time you have given me, right? Yeah, interesting and difficult. My son and daughter are young adults, but it's difficult to exercise authority. There's the digital divide between parents and children, and it's not that we don't know how to use the technology, but we adopt technology in a different way with different tools. Not necessarily we are adept to all kinds of digital technology, but sometimes you focus on your job or your tools or the tools that you used to being an adult. And even children have access to devices, mobile devices from the early stages. We were discussing if you would leave your child cross major crossroad here in Buenos Aires. No, we would never leave them or let them do it. And then we have a question from Abelardo Martinez. If it's difficult to quantify the damage when the information is shared in the deep web. Yes, but we have seen we are becoming a elitist because we can do the investigation. However, if the investigation team does not have the necessary equipment to do this investigation, for example, in the deep web, there are criminals or stalkers that they are in the deep web, and if our investigation is not in line with that equipment, and the victim is vulnerable enough or doesn't have the means to pay for that expert, unfortunately, my reply is gonna be no, because we need the budget for investigation departments or for the justice system. Because if there's a weak investigation, when it gets to the prosecutor, obviously the case is gonna be a cold case by now. And also prosecutors or the judiciary needs to have the necessary equipment to assess this sort of evidence. Thank you very much. I'm sure that you can share the PowerPoint so we can share it in turn with the rest of the students that are attending the course. Glad to see you here. Hope that we can meet some other time later so we can share some coffee and discuss these topics that are so interesting. Thank you for participating, and hugs from Buenos Aires, greetings from Oscar and Adrian that are here. Thank you very much. You're more than welcome in Panama whenever you want to come here. Thank you.
We're going to have a small break, and then we're going to move on to a really interesting panel about the gender divide in internet.